presses down on top of him. And a pressing, throbbing headache begins to build in the back of his skull. Oh God, these choices, each one of them is will impact my people far more than it will me. To make a choice, that seems punishment enough. But David must make a decision. And so David chooses the third door, the 3-day plague. For it is the only option that does not involve the participation of his enemies. Rather, as David says, let us fall into the Lord's hand, for his mercies are great. The plague will begin in the morning. Dawn breaks, and the peace that once permeated the land is penetrated by screams of the dying. The stench, surely you can smell the stench as it rides the wind to Jerusalem, filling the king's nostrils as he sits tormented in the safety of his palace. The Lord is exercising his judgment, and he watches as it is played out. The angel of the Lord marches through the streets, and with his flaming sword casts sorrow and death. And David watches as men and women and children are cast down before him, and he can do nothing. All the while the Lord watches as his judgment is exercised. That is, until the angel of the Lord extends his sword at Jerusalem, the city of the king, to destroy it as well. God calls out, "It is enough, stay your hand!" The angel sheathes his sword, stood still at the threshing floor of Araunah. But he does not fly away. He waits. Perhaps David walks through the death-filled streets. Watching his people struck down is like watching wolves tear apart his sheep. David, delirious in his anguish, stumbles over the body of a woman who meets his tear-filled gaze, her eyes obscured by her muddied gray hair. She wheezes, obviously dying, obviously suffering. And it's as if David is looking again at a torn and bloodied lamb. We have heard that David has beaten back bears and lions for his flocks, and now he can do nothing? God, how could I have put my own ambition before the needs of my people? Surely I must spare the innocent, even if that means calling down the Lord's wrath upon my head alone.
Go down and pitch.
And so he makes another plea, his shepherd's heart reawakened. Look with me to verse 17. When David saw the angel striking the people, he said to the Lord, "Look, I am the one who has sinned. I am the one who has done wrong. But these sheep, what have they done? Please let your hand be against me and my father's family." And as the words spill over his tongue, he readies himself for the certain wrath to come, ready for the word of the Lord, the response of the king. And the king does respond. He does indeed respond. The word of the Lord again arrives by the prophet of Gad. But there is no proclamation of judgment here. Gad lays no more choices before our king. Instead, David's giving instruction. David's to leave, to go to the threshing floor where the angel of the Lord waits, and offer a sacrifice. Of course! David thinks to himself, this makes sense. It may be unexpected, but I've grown up in a sacrificial system that's asserted quite vividly that forgiveness cannot be given unless blood has been shed. And so David sets off at a run, eager to offer the sacrifice. And as he sets his eyes on that hill, he unwittingly walks into another crisis, one that